suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel. We're noticing other people losing up to 7 pounds in the first week. 4 pounds has been about the average. As you lose weight and as you take these Bella Melts, it's going to help lower that blood sugar in your body as well.
All the information is there. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. Just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 fast action.
Welcome to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you being here always and always. We are live as every other day on worldviewtube.com, worldviewtube, a Rumble on X account, and also worldviewtube app, which I will remind you again, it is for free, available on your app store, and I strongly suggest you install it. Turn on the notifications so you almost never miss any of the shows or breaking news or special coverages. We're also live on X America News on X, and we're live on my platforms on X, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, where else? Rumble, Substack, everywhere. So joining the conversation, putting your comments. I do have a very special guest who's going to join me here in a minute. If you have any questions for him, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of questions for him, don't shy away. Put them on the comment section. I will do my very best to get to your questions on the very last segment of the show. There's a lot to discuss about Iran, as always, but I want to let you know that today we will touch on Iran, but the focus will be in Texas, the Islamization of Texas. And if you missed my Substack today, I strongly recommend you go grab it, read it. I haven't even had the chance to share it on my other platforms, so just go to my Substack. You'll see it. It's the top Substack. But as you know, I've been covering, I was one of the early voices to come out of screaming, Epic City in Texas. Now we have Qatar City, or some of you pronounce it Qatar City, going on in Arizona. So I covered the Qatar City in Arizona, but I mainly covered who's behind Qatar City and the lies that is being provided, as always, for this operation to move forward until further screams come out and try to stop it. But all that mindset being given, I don't want to take too much of this segment. I want to bring on my very special guest, fellow Iranian-American, Abteen Vaziri. He is running for Congress in the state of Texas, District 32. He is, from what I've heard and what I've seen, this is my first time talking to him in person, but from what I've seen and tracked, he is on fire. So, Mr. Vaziri, welcome to Live Up to Freedom. What an honor to have you here.
Thank you. The honor is all mine. I appreciate it, and thank you for having me.
Of course. As I told my audience, this is the first time we're speaking, or at least talking in person. We have been communicating through email, but I have, of course, it's a habit. I'm an investigative journalist. So I've dug through word by word of your website, which, by the way, guys, you can go to Abteen Vaziri. That's ABTEEN, AbteenVaziri.com. You get to know him. I have dug through your website. I've read through your issues. I watched your recent interview in Farsi in one of the Iranian channels, and I have 5 million questions, but as you heard me promise my audience, they're probably going to have a bunch of questions too. But before we dive in really deep, do me a favor. I gave a one-liner of Iranian-American congressional candidate, but why don't you tell my audience in a few minutes your background? Because if I heard correctly, you were actually born in heart of the Islamic coup d'etat in '79 and all that good stuff. So tell us about your background, where you come from, and then we get to your campaign.
Sure. So for those that aren't familiar with my name, Abteen is actually an ancient Zoroastrian pre-Islamic name. It means the seeker of truth, and it comes from an interesting poetry book that's used as a literary masterpiece. In fact, it's the largest poetry book written in history by a famous poet called Ferdowsi. And Abteen was a character in this Persian mythology, and this name Seeker of Truth was a king, and he was the father of another character in the book, Ferdinand, and the main character in the book was Rustam, and it was all about how the Persian kings basically fought and kicked out the Muslim invaders or the Islamic radical invaders out of Persia 1400 years ago. And my last name Vaziri, it means minister or the king's right hand man. So I just wanted to explain that before we dive in. My story is very interesting. My father was an Iranian Air Force colonel, and he did all his Air Force training in the United States back in that's another interesting topic that a lot of people I think don't understand, is that Iran and the United States were allies, and my father was selected as top of his military academy class to become an F-14 pilot. Things took a different turn. He ended up studying logistics and worked in logistics in the Air Force. But he came to the United States as part of the Shah's Air Force officer training cadets, and he came here in 1972, 1974, and in 1976 he came here with my mother. And then, they were in San Antonio. They moved to Biloxi, Mississippi. They were doing logistics training. And then my parents went back to Iran, and I was born in October 1978, October 23rd, 1978. Actually, interesting month because the Shah of Iran and the current Crown Prince also shared that same month birthday with me. They're both Scorpios. And anyway, as I was being born, it was the middle of martial law, and my father, at the time a major in the Air Force, was trying to go to the hospital where I would be born, and he got stopped several times. I almost got shot on the way to the hospital where I was born. So I was definitely a child of the revolution. Shortly after I was born, the 1979 revolution happened. My father was court-martialed and given a death sentence, and his crime was that he said, as an Air Force officer, we should not have an Islamic form of government. We should have a secular form of government. And that alone was enough to earn him a death sentence. And he was actually one of the fortunate ones, because about 100,000 military officers who were very loyal to the king and very loyal to, the form of government that we had were executed or exiled. I have a very good friend here in Texas. His father also just passed, just like my father did about a year before my dad. But his dad was an F-4 pilot and a KC-130 tanker pilot. And him and the first officer essentially took the plane and hijacked it and went to Egypt just as a way to get away, because they were executed, killing so many Air Force officers. So my father ended up actually getting a pardon. And the reason he got a pardon, because the Iran-Iraq war was going on. And a friend of his that he went to the military academy in Iran, became the head of the Air Force, went to his jail cell, said, we're not ready for this attack by Iraq. Our military has completely been killed or purged, and we need all the bodies that we can get. You're in logistics. We're moving troops. We're moving weapons. We're moving planes. We need you to come back. So essentially, the same government that tried to kill him, he had to go become an indentured servant and serve in the Iran-Iraq war. Now, he was serving his country, but hesitantly, because he was also serving the mullah's military to protect Iran.
Can I stop you for 1 second, Abteen?
Sure, sorry.
I am so
Please.
glad you brought this up, because one of the points I at least try to make is to tell my fellow Americans or people of the West that when you hear these mullahs sit there and talk about the tens of thousands of Iranians who fought Saddam Hussein and brag about their position, it is a lie. It is a myth. Our soldiers weren't fighting for Khomeini. They were fighting for their land. And it had nothing to do with Khomeini or his popularity or the Islamic side of things. So I just wanted to say thank you for confirming that, because it's such a myth that, the beginning of this revolution, people were in love with Khomeini. No, they weren't.
No, nobody was in love with Khomeini. But what happened is, by Iraq attacking Iran, it basically made people become more worried about their nationalism, that they cared about their country. So they went to war and forgot about the mullahs. They're like, let's go deal with this enemy that's coming to essentially turn us into Iraq, and let's kill them off and protect our country. When we're done with that, we'll deal with these mullahs later. And by the way, another important, really important fact to understand is a lot of F-4 and F-14 pilots in the beginning of the attack by Iraq, the Iranian government refused to allow a lot of ground forces from Mashhad to come to the border to protect Iran because they were so afraid that the military was going to coup d'etat and turn on the mullahs. So this caused an extra 500,000 to 1 million people to get slaughtered for no reason because the mullahs didn't trust the military to not just attack Iraq, but to attack them. So the way that the Iranian military was protecting the border was they were sending Air Force to attack the army because they were not allowing the army to go to the border, protect the borders, because they're afraid the army was going to turn on them. Because the army didn't like the mullahs, but they had to, protect the borders of their country. It was a very difficult and very complicated situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue with your story. You were saying that your father started serving.
So my father served, as an indentured servant, served his country, and then in 1989, when the war ended, he put in for his resignation. They rejected his resignation, and back then they didn't trust any military officers to leave to give away military secrets. So military officers had basically they were not allowed to exit the country. So my father got a fake passport, bribed someone in the Austrian embassy, and was able to escape and go to Austria. And then my mother and my sister and I. My two sisters and I were able to basically do the same thing. 2 weeks later, go to France, and then we rendezvoused, and we went to Belgium, went to Holland, and ended up in Germany as political refugees. What's funny is 2 days after we landed in Germany as political refugees, the Berlin Wall came down. So we got to experience another interesting historical event by watching the Berlin Wall fall. Anyway, wow. So fast forward two years later, we basically were able to put in as political refugees and came to the United States with a green card. In 1991, we landed in Los Angeles, and then we were refugees one other time. We were refugees from California to Texas in 1995 in the first wave of refugees. And I joke that I've been a refugee twice in my life, once from Iran and once from California, the great state of Texas. So I've been a Texan now for 30 years, minus about a 8 or 9 year stint where I lived and worked in New York. But, during COVID, I just got so disillusioned with New York and escaped back to the state of Texas. Now I've been here since the beginning of COVID, but literally about 2 years. But my family and I are Texan. We consider ourselves Texan first, American second, and then Iranian third. But, obviously I still have a lot of my Iranian roots and I love my culture, but, we consider ourselves Texans more than anything else.
I do not blame you. I spent about 9 months. I've been to Texas plenty of time, but I spent 9 months living life in Dallas, Texas. And I met a lot of fellow Iranians there who over the time, they're like, we're Texans first. I'm like, that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't survive. I'll be honest with you. I moved when my project was done. I moved back, probably because I'm Ohioan. If you ask, I'm Ohio, and that's where roots are, home is. Anyhow, not to get too distracted with my story. Okay, so I wanna get into, of course, your decision to run. Though I have heard the story, but I want my audience to hear. But I wanna kind of wrap up what we just heard from Abteen before we go to our first ad break. So, as you know, guys, my audience, as you know, for the last 37 days. Aside focusing on what's happening in Iran, the massacre of Iranian people, the lack of support, all of that, I have also tried to introduce you guys to us, the Iranian something, Iranian-Americans, Iranian Canadians, Iranian British, whatever it is, because I can't help but to think that thanks to mainstream media, we have been painted as a confusion. You just heard Abteen. He's running for Congress. I'm sure he'll tell you the story that he had better things to do than running for Congress and dealing with all the headache. But we are not what you've been told. This is my opinion. Don't put it on Abteen because I don't want to hit his campaign. But every time you say you Arabs, well, we're not. Nothing against Arab people, but we're not. Every time you say we shouldn't help Iranian people today with military attack because we're going to have another Libya or Afghanistan, Iraq on our hands, well, look again. You have met many people who have respected America, respected Canada. We assimilated, we have adapted the modern life of our second home, and we have defended our homes. So with that being said, I'm not going to go on because I can talk about this topic for another 2 days, Abteen John. But let's do this, guys. I know your I can see your comments coming in fast. We're going to take our first ad break. When we come back, next segment, we're going to get into Abteen's decision, his campaign, and then a segment after that, I promise to get your questions to Abteen. Don't go anywhere because we're going to be back in literally 1 minute.
Life is too short to spend a single moment spinning in laundry worries. Take a load off your mind with the all-new Norwex Powerzyme laundry detergent. This natural detergent harnesses the power of enzymes and plant-based surfactants to leave fabrics fresh and clean without fillers, brighteners, synthetic fragrances, bleach, or harsh chemicals. So go ahead, have your cake and eat it too. More than ever, stressful stains have met their match. Powerzyme's fast-acting enzymes break down organic substances while natural surfactants loosen locked-in dirt and oil, removing residue, stains, and odors with ease. With 91% bio-based ingredients, this dermatologist-tested hypoallergenic formula is suitable for sensitive skin types and delivers a safe and effective clean that won't harm you or the planet's waterways. Less time spent worrying about laundry means you can focus on what truly matters. Norwex Powerzyme Laundry Detergent. Discover the power of nature and load up on confidence.
Live up to freedom. Thank you so much for staying with us until now. I appreciate it. And I don't wish this on anyone, but if there was ever a doubt in my life that Norwex would be a huge help, it's been proven in last 37 days between translating, reporting, doing my show, writing Substack, analyzing, commentary, going on other shows. I can tell you my house is in order. Laundry is done and house stays clean. That's Norwex for you. 100% chemical-free product. You save money, and while you clean up your house with much better product than you used to use, you support what I do financially, because as a consultant, I receive a percentage of your purchase in form of commission. CyrusWellness.com. That's CyrusWellness.com is where you can support me and yourself and your household. Let's get right back into it. Abteen John, I can tell you right now, like literally as we start the second segment, I can tell you that immediately after this show, I'm going to write you again and say, let's do part 2. Because I don't think we can fit everything into one show. So hopefully by end of this program, you're happy enough to come back again.
Would love to.
Thank you. So I will give you one disclaimer to make it easier for you to continue the discussion. My audience are extremely well-versed on Islam, jihad, Islamic governments. They have been with me for 10 years, and that is the focus of my subject. Second thing is we do not filter ourselves here. You can drop names, you can name names, as long as you keep it clean. Don't feel like you need to hold back on anything. With that being said, let's dive into one of the main things that you boldly have on top of your website as one of the issues that, if Lord willing, elected, you will address immediately. And that is, of course, based on campaign wording, you call it radical Islam, but let's call it Islamization of America, more specifically, Islamization of Texas. Floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned something. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think you mentioned something that was really interesting, and you said assimilation. I think that's a really important term. America's been a country that's been built on immigrants and immigration, right? Everybody in America essentially is an immigrant, right? And the early cultures, the Jewish cultures, the Irish cultures, the Italian cultures, all these cultures that came here, they all came here to assimilate, and they wanted to be American. And then I think the minute that we started putting Iranian-American or Indian-American or African-American, we started differentiating people. We are all American. And I think what our politicians over the last 10, 15 years and maybe longer have really sold us out. And instead of bringing people here that want to be American, they've sold us out and started bringing people here that are trying to bring their backwards ideology, their backwards form of government, their backwards everything that made them leave their former country. And instead of wanting to come here and assimilate and be American, they're trying to bring all the bad parts about their previous culture and their previous religion or whatnot to this country. And that's where we have to make a stand. And, the left has been strong arming us and telling us, oh, you're an Islamophobe and you're racist and you're, anti-immigration. No, this is a country founded by immigrants. So Republicans are not saying let's not bring immigrants. They're just saying stop selling this country out to people that don't want to be Americans. If you come here and you're in Congress and you're holding a Palestinian flag or an LGBT flag, then you're not an American. You should not be in the United States Congress. Even though I'm Iranian and I really feel very much attached to my culture, my food, my identity, there are only two flags that I will ever touch, and that's the Texas flag and the American flag. And I think this identification, this distinction is very, very important. And we cannot have Mamdanis of the world. And, we'll talk about Mamdani. I'm sure you have a million questions to ask. But where else do we see that? I think a lot of, I talk about Indian Americans, Pakistani Americans, and I think it's really important to distinguish that Iran used to be an empire, and all the states in Iran were called Ostan. So all these countries that people refer to as stands, all of those were states in Iran or in Persia. And people also don't understand that India used to be called Hindustan, which was also a state in Persia. Pakistan was a state in Persia, also called Pakistan. But together they became India, and the Muslims and the Hindus, they fought each other, had a civil war until the Indians gave them their own piece of land and gave them Pakistan. And there's still a few Muslims left in India. But those few Muslims that were kicked out, one of them was the family of Ayatollah Khomeini. The other one is the family of Ayatollah Mamdani. And those two people have a lot of similarities because one of them came to Iran and promised a bunch of free stuff, was a Marxist, and lied about everything. The other one is family from India, also Muslim, Marxist, promised a bunch of free stuff. And we're going to see it's going to be the exact same ending as Ayatollah Khomeini. But the other part is, a lot of people say, oh, the Palestinians just want their piece of land. Well, look at Lebanon, for example. Lebanon was a majority Christian country. It was the Paris of, Beirut was the Paris of Middle East. Every country wanted to, basically go to Beirut and hang out in Beirut and the cafes, and it was beautiful. And they had a huge heart. And today, Lebanon has the highest percentage of refugees in the world. And what they did is they opened their borders. They let the Palestinians come in out of the kindness of their heart, and the Palestinians became Hezbollah, and they turned on them and turned that country Islamic and destroyed it. The same thing happened to Iran. And again, I'm not saying anything negative about Islam because everybody in my family is Muslim. They call me an Islamophobe. It's not being an Islamophobe when phobia, it means a fear, irrational fear. When the fear is very rational because they destroyed my entire family and they're coming here to destroy this country, that's not a phobia. That's a rational fear. But what happened with Pakistan and India? They gave them their own piece of land and then developed nukes and they tried to nuke India. The same thing is going on with with Palestinians. They offered them a piece of land a million times. They didn't want to take it. And what do they want? They want to turn Israel into Muslim country. And the same thing happened to Iran. And now I think the two biggest prize for the radical Islam in the Middle East was Lebanon and Iran, because those are the two bastions of freedom, and the Islamic terrorists wanted to destroy that. Today, the two bastions of freedom in the United States are Texas and Florida, and you're seeing all this Islamification because it's the game prize, and they want to destroy those two last bastions of freedom because they figure if they destroy Texas, if they destroy Florida, then they have the United States. And we're not going to allow that.
Amen. Let me explain something real quick since you said flags. I actually, right in front of my house, I have this, 20 feet tall flagpole. The very top is an American flag. Below that is the Lion and Sun flag. And there's one right here. This one is very recent. This isn't a statement made through the flag here. But there is a difference. As you said, you don't wrap yourself in a whatever. It's not even about Palestine. You don't wrap yourself in a foreign flag the night of your victory as American representative. Right there, the message was received, not by all, by very few, and this is where I want to go with this the next part of this discussion. Upton John, the problem is, I literally agree with everything you said. I have literally dedicated over a decade of my life in America to make Americans especially aware of the dangers of Islamization in America. But the problem goes further than the left armstronging us, the right being weakened by choice or not. The problem goes beyond, because then we have our fellow Americans who are so afraid of the labels you just said that they have decided to bend a little and a little and a little to where when one person shows up with a foreign flag wrapped around them, or the other one on a speech says, as long as you have your Somalian girl in Congress, I will be representing the interest of Somalians in American Congress. That is Ilhan Omar, by the way, for the record. People don't show reaction. They might put a couple of posts on social media, but we have lost that touch of American, we the people. What say you?
And you said something very beautiful. Listen, I'm not taking anything away from the Lion Sun flag. In fact, I own the website domain name, lionandsun.com. And somebody just tried to buy it from me. I've owned it for years, and I will never give it up. I love the Lion and Sun. But let me tell you, as someone that's running for the Texas 32nd Congressional District, who's supposed to represent every single American in my district, it's inappropriate for me to have any other flag other than the Texas flag or the United States flag. I love the Lion and Sun. Don't get me wrong. I've been leading every weekend I've been going and leading the demonstrations. You know, we had it in front of JFK Memorial several weeks. And people try to hand me the picture of Reza Shah. People try to hand me, a Lion and Sun flag. And I would love to hold that. But as someone who's running for Texas's 32nd Congressional District, representing my jurisdiction, U.S. Congress, it's not appropriate for me to ever hold any other flag except the Texas flag or the United States flag. And I joke around that I'm a dual citizen. My citizenship is Texan and American.
Oh, you Texans. Don't leave us or stay with us. I know. And Texas,
by the way, another interesting fact that a lot of your audience may not know, Texas is the only state flag that's allowed to fly at the same height as the United States flag. And the reason for that is Texas used to be its own republic, and it's had 6 different flags. There was a Confederate flag, there was a previous Confederate flag, there was a French flag, there was a Spain flag, and there was a Mexican flag, and the Republic of Texas, and now United States. So Texas is the only state in the Union that's allowed to fly its flag at the same height as the United States flag.
Got it. I love your love for America, and then zoomed into Texas. That is rare. I'll say that. And I'm not trying to separate. Well, we are speaking English and we're talking about America, but it is rare to see, as you said, blank dash American with such a passion. So that is very refreshing. It is, of course, on top of that, through bloodline being brothers and sisters, me and you, of Persia, that's even more proudful. I know we're not supposed to be, pride is not such a good thing, but guys, we gotta do this. I'm loving this. Yes, there will be part 2. I promise you guys. We gotta head to our next ad break. When we come back, we're gonna take some of your questions, and then we're gonna go a little deeper into the Epic City situation, which is literally next door to Abteen's area. And I'm not sure, we'll ask him when we come back, but I think District 32 does cover Plano. And if that's the case, we have hope, because if we help him get elected, then he can stand up to, well, Epic City. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Well, hello, everybody. It's Annie Cyrus. Welcome to my art studio where all the magic happens. This is the station for painting, and that is the station for all the resin art I do. If you want to check out my art, all you gotta do is go to lutfstudio.com. finish this painting, but I'm sure, or at least I hope, I'll see you at lutfstudio.com. Welcome back to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for staying with me until now. I normally do a longer plugs, but if you do not need to purchase from Norwex, that's all right. You can go to my artist studio and make a purchase from my artist studio, where you find items that are, well, handmade, 100% handmade by myself, and other products, including the molds for building them, are US made. So lutfstudio.com. That's lutfstudio.com. Use promo code MISSION for 10% off your purchases. And I know we're low on inventory. I'll catch up with that soon. Let's bring back Abteen to the show. Is it okay, Abteen, if we grab some of the questions from the audience before we move on with the topic?
Absolutely. And you're right. I did grow up in Plano, and the Epic Mosque is not far from where I grew up, where I went to high school in Plano Senior High School.
Good. You see, I may not be a Texan, but just being in Dallas long enough, I learned some of the districts. I was actually 10 minutes right off of Plano. It was scary. Okay, we'll get to questions, I promise. But I went to Texas for first time in my life in America in 2011. And then I went back in 2018, and it was a little cloudy. Then I went back, which I said, spending 9 months in 2023, February of 2003, and it was pitch dark in certain areas. Like, I walked around and all I saw was the halal store and the, Allahu Akbar bazaar and all the hijab. I was like, what happened to Dallas? And this was all, area of, I'm not remembering all the names, but like Plano and wherever mine was, I don't even remember my city, but it was like just in like 12 years, the transition was terrifying, which I can actually relate this to one of the questions coming on the comment section. They would like to know your thoughts on how would Texas, of all places, allow such a progressive Islamization to take place?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting question, but that's a whole other can of worms. And a lot of, I've been in the immigration business for 13 years. I actually bring foreign direct investments through the EB-5 program and I help families that bring $800,000 and invest and create 10 American jobs, bring foreign direct investment and create jobs for U.S. citizens. So I've been involved in that for about 14 years. And so I deal with, I'm an attorney, but I'm not an immigration attorney. I'm a securities attorney by trade, but I deal with a lot of immigration attorneys with, in this EB-5 practice that I have. But what's happening is another fraud that you're probably not aware of, but it's really kind of getting uncovered here by a lot of journalists here in North Texas, is the H-1B fraud. And the H-1B fraud is the extent of it may look Minnesota look like a walk in the park. And what's going on is there's estimates that there's something like 400 to 700,000 H-1Bs that have been brought to Texas. And you guys have seen in the press that Governor Abbott just recently tried to stop that and put a moratorium on it. And I think people mistakenly think that the Governor Abbott has stopped H-1B. That's actually the furthest thing from the truth. Governor Abbott was complicit in this fraud because as the CEO of the state of Texas, essentially one of the largest employers in the state of Texas, he was complicit, and the state of Texas was hiring all these H-1Bs and bringing people unchecked from all these different countries, and there were a lot of India and Pakistan that were brought in here. And imagine the state of Texas, a lot of universities were hiring H-1Bs to come here to the United States to teach English. I mean, imagine the fraud that's involved. We don't have anyone here locally that's graduated from our universities that could teach English. We have to bring people from India and Pakistan and other countries around the world to teach English. So all that Governor Abbott did is just temporarily put a moratorium on the state of Texas as an employer hiring H-1Bs. There's still millions of other employers hiring H-1Bs. And in fact, what's been uncovered is that the local, Indian and Pakistani other communities actually are setting up these fake businesses. One home address could have as much as 75 people claiming to be consultants at H-1B. So essentially they're selling, residency to people back home. and are committing mass fraud and bringing H-1Bs here and making money off of it. And not only was Governor Abbott, I think, ineffective by not only not stopping H-1Bs, but being complicit in it, he also has allowed the Muslim games to happen here 3 years running. And the understanding is that one of his largest campaign contributors is a billionaire who's of Pakistani descent, who's given his campaign $11 million, and he's looked the other way and allowed the Islamification of Texas to happen. In fact, I'm going to be at an event with Governor Abbott this Saturday, a campaign event, and I'll be sure to let him know that our displeasure that he sold us out to the Islamification of Texas, and what he's doing now and getting headlines from it is too little too late.
Isn't that always the case? It's one of the things that I always say. It's one of the issues we face in America is normally by the time the backlash, I was hinting at that at the beginning of the show, by the time the backlash comes, it's a little too late. Just like Epic City, you know, at the beginning, myself and two other voices, we were screaming, but it took so long until one bigger name said something, and then the flood of backlash started. I'm glad you brought up Governor Abbott, because we have Kucheta. I think Kucheta is actually from Texas. The question is, have you considered building rapport with Dr. P. Chambers, who's running for Texas governor, to replace Abbott?
I have not met Dr. P. Chambers, and nor do I know his campaign or what he's running on, but anyone that's running against Governor Abbott, I would definitely be happy to talk to. I did meet another gentleman named Bob, and I forget his last name, the day that I went to the Republican Party of Texas, the day that my campaign, basically filing for my campaign was due. And it was a nice gentleman from Bryan, Texas. I don't know his views either, but I know there are a few people that are running. I would love to meet Dr. Chambers and find out what his views are on running for governor.
Sounds good. Well, Kucheta, if you like, if you go to Abteen's website, it's on the lower third, just in case for the spelling, AbteenVaziri.com. There's an email address at the bottom. You can just send him an email if you have any contact information or any information you want him to have before meeting Dr. P. Chambers. You see, this is why I like doing live, because you get information that I had no idea. I am guilty. I don't necessarily follow all the local elections or candidates. To be honest, humanly impossible to do that. So I didn't even know somebody is running to replace. I feel like with Abbott, I have this love-hate relationship. Like there are times where he says the very right thing at the perfect time, and then there are times where his action doesn't match what he just said. I'm like, oh, here we go. He does a lot of flip-flopping. And on that note of flip-flopping, he did a lot of flip-flopping when the backlash of Epic City came out. So let me do what most...
I'll tell you an interesting story. So the folks at Epic City have invited me to go to a forum on Monday, and I'm actually going to go talk to them and have a civil discourse, and we'll see how that goes. So I'd love to be back and give you an update on that. The other thing, and I apologize if I'm jumping in and asking, telling that, but another thing that's really important, there's a sitting congressman now named Lance Gooden in Texas's 5th District, and he has been on a paid lobbying trip to the terrorist camp of the Mujahideen, MEK, who paid him, not just him, but many Republicans, including Mike Pompeo and Rudy Giuliani. And these people went and got paid to be at a terrorist camp in Albania. These are people that are listed as a terrorist organization. And we Iranians know how they are. They're actually Marxist Islamists. And they have a ton of Republicans that have gone on paid lobbying trips and visited their terrorist camp. And nobody understands this. If you go to Google Lance Gooden, you'll see it. Mike Pompeo's been there. Rudy Giuliani's been there. Many other Republicans have been there. And it's a travesty that we think the Republicans are the ones that are supposed to protect us, and they're in the cahoots with Marxist Islamist terror organizations. Blows my mind.
You are in a very right company. This might come to you as a surprise that my audience know everything you could think of knowing about MEK. I have covered Mujahideen Khalq on their MEK, POMI, NCR, NCRI, every lipstick they put on themselves. I've been covering them for 12 years. And for last 37 days, I've been exposing them, including the most recent report I put out 2 days ago, naming 144 Congress members, Republican, who have officially endorsed Maryam Rajavi. So you see, you're in great company. We all know about MEK here.
I just made a video and explained, and I'm going to publish it later, but I explained why do people in Iran support Reza Pahlavi? And I say, if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, go watch Game of Thrones. There's a lot of analogies that show that Ned Stark was essentially the Shah. His children got displaced, and finally, one of his sons, or one of his family members, Jon Snow, came back and took the in our culture, peacock throne, but in the Game of Thrones, and the other person that everyone thought was going to be, this person was Daenerys, and Daenerys I compare her to Maryam Rajavi because yes, I have that video. I'll show it to you. Daenerys, everyone thought, oh, this is the savior, but Daenerys was more evil than the people that were running Westeros, and Maryam Rajavi is the Daenerys of Iran.
Absolutely. I love that. I if you don't mind, when you publish it, please send me the link to it. I want to watch it, and then of course I'll put it out on my platforms as well. But yes, that is where I believe I've heard you say on the interview I watched, you said one of the reasons you decided to run was when you realized that the Republican Party has become more and more weak when it comes to exactly. And I want to make sure we have the time. Yes, we have about 4 minutes before we are up for our next ad break. If 4 minutes is enough, if not, we can always get to the next one. But from your point of view, because I'm neither a Republican or Democrat, by the way, so I should have let you know this sooner, Abteen John. I'm neither. I walked away from Republican Party 9 years ago. I'm an independent constitutionalist. So when I talk about, thank you. When I talk about Republicans, I get attacked, right? Because you're not a Republican, you don't like Republicans. Joe, that's not the case. Anyone who goes against the Constitution of the United States of America, I shall stand against. That's just my value. But now you are a Republican. You are running as a Republican candidate. So why don't you tell my audience why you said what you just said? Republican has become the swamp.
I have a good friend named Richard, and he's a Republican, by the way. I consider myself sometimes a libertarian, but they have their own issues too, right? Nobody's a perfect anything. I've been a Republican my entire life, but my friend Richard always says that the Democrats are evil and the Republicans are stupid, and that's the case. And I think the Republicans are just a bunch of pussies. And the reason that the Republican Party even exists is because President Trump knows all the dirty tricks, and he plays the dirty tricks back at him. And, I consider myself, I guess, a Persian Trump. And even, I don't agree with President Trump on everything. I think he's too weak on China. I would be a lot tougher on China because I think China is destroying us. Our Magnificent Seven companies, the top 7 market cap companies in the United States, almost all of them are blocked from doing business in China. And now we're just doing too little too late by allowing a little bit of tariffs to make up for that. No, we should block all Chinese products from the United States. And it's not going to raise the price of anything. If you're buying an item that's Chinese, they have the same item in German. You just buy the German product. All this false narrative that somehow putting these huge tariffs on China is going to hurt the middle class. It's not true. The companies like Amazon and Walmart, who basically sold themselves out to China, allowed China to come here and sell a bunch of cheap junk to our country, those are the people that have sold us out. And the Republicans and Democrats have all got paid under the table and allowed this to happen. Oh, the other question that you had, why did I decide to run? My father always instilled in me, he said, don't ever forget these names, Brzezinski and Carter. These people destroyed Iran. And Brzezinski was the architect of Islamic jihadism. Islamic jihadism, a lot of people don't know, this was just a concept that was in books. It didn't actually exist in reality. And Brzezinski opened the Pandora's box and created this Islamic jihad. This whole concept of Islamic jihad and all these terrorism, all this stuff was created for them to beat the Soviet Union. And now they can't put this jackal back into the box. And now it's destroying the whole world. And we are where we are. And I think the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the election of Mamdani, and the passing of my father, those are the 3 things that really inspired me to run, and why I think it's actually really important for people to understand the travesty that happened in New York about Mamdani getting elected is not so much that we have a socialist, communist, Marxist, terrorist essentially in the mayor's house. The mayor doesn't really have that much power. The bigger problem is that the people that elected Mamdani are not actually New Yorkers. They're keyboard warriors that are called the Democratic Socialists of America, and they're going around the country, and they're very sophisticated with TikTok and social media, and they're stealing every election. They just stole the election in Tehran County, and they're coming to a city near you. And that's the biggest threat that we have in America right now is Democratic Socialists of America and the people like George Soros that are behind them, that are funding them, as well as others.
Agreed. And this is exactly why I say on every single show, or at least I try to remember to say on every single show or every single Substack or every single interview, that we the people hold the power, except that we decided not to choose to use the power. We can easily counter all of these movements. We need to show up. That's the problem. We don't show up. We barely tune into something important. We barely make a comment, let alone going in and spreading the word, which we are up for our last ad break. But I will use this transition to say, you don't have to be a Texan. You don't have to be inside District 32 to support people like Abteen Vaziri. I tried not to do this interview, which, as you guys know, I don't do that anyways, but I tried not to do this as another PR campaign for Abteen Vaziri, so you get to know the real man behind this name and this campaign. It is rare. We don't have enough people who are running boldly with values that matches the American values. And when we do find them, we need to show up for them. If you have a program, invite him on. If you write Substack, do an interview with him, write about him, highlight his issues on his campaign. If you're none of those, go to his website, grab his information, send it out. We all have social media. Even if one of our followers on social media is from his district, that's enough to expect him to run. And by him, I don't mean necessarily just Abteen right now because I'm biased. This is about when we have good people running, we need to show up for them. We can't expect them to choose to run, disrupt their life to run, spend all the money to run, do all the PR on themselves, go win and do the job. That is the spoiled attitude of us Americans. We need to show up. We need to show up in numbers. We have to put time into those who are doing the right thing for the right reason. I am talking too much. Maybe you should consider hiring me as one of your PR campaign managers.
Would love to. Now, one thing I would say, I've been humbled. I've had people from like Florida and other people that are, whether Iranian or they're just, are sick and tired of the middle class being taken advantage of, or they're patriots and they like my message. People are sending me $25 checks, $100 checks. And I'm so humbled, and I really want to thank every single one of those people, because if you can help with the campaign contribution, thank you so much. But if you can help with social media, if you can help just getting the word out, anything that you could do to help, and every little effort helps, I really humbly, from the bottom of my heart, I really thank you and I appreciate you. And those that are in the Texas 32, please vote for me so I can go to Washington and fight for District 32 and make sure that the Islamification of the United States, and more important, the Islamification of Texas, never, ever, ever, ever happens. People in Iran are paying dearly for other people basically being asleep at the wheel, and the silent majority, and now 2 million people are dead, and we cannot get rid of these Islamists. They came to power peacefully, and you have to basically have half your population die to get rid of them. They are like the White Walker, like the Night King in Game of Thrones, and I'll send that video out later.
Yes. Guys, we're going to head to our last ad break. Don't go anywhere. We'll still have 10 minutes with Abteen Vaziri when we come back.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home. Went to bed.
Welcome back to Live Up to Freedom. Thank you so much for staying with us until now. I am seeing all your comments. I am very glad that you are all enjoying this conversation as much as I am. I do see your support for Abteen, and he can hear me saying that you are supporting him and cheering him on the comment section. But I want you to take it a step further. Go to his website, bookmark the website, write it down, or just come back to the show and write it down, because I know sometimes the spelling could be a little of a hiccup. But go to his website. Help in any shape or form. Share his information, contact him, go knock at doors if you're in District 32, whatever it takes. We all can play our parts. Since we only have a few minutes left, Abteen John, as I said, we definitely need to do a part 2. But as of today, as of right now, as I'm way too excited, is there anything that you think the part 1 of today you need to tell my audience before we let you go?
You know, people ask me, they're like, what's the biggest threat to our democracy? And, you know, some people say, well, Democrats. Well, I don't think Democrats are the biggest threat to our democracy, because they're already not even American. They're anti-American. They're in, streets protesting against the federal government and federal agents. And they're in the streets protesting in favor of a dictator, Maduro. And so they're completely gone. But the biggest threat for the United States, I think, for Americans, is weak Republicans that are going to go to Washington. They're going to fall in line, and they're not going to do anything. And that's more dangerous than having Democrats go to Washington, because Democrats are already the enemy. Weak Republicans are a danger, and we need to vote them all out of office. And we got to send Republicans that have a backbone like President Trump to go out to Washington and fight for change, and not fall into the swamp and try to go enrich themselves in Washington. And unfortunately, in every one of these races, you have these candidates that are swamp candidates that are handpicked, and they're trying to bypass the primary process and bypass the democratic process and get these people to go there and help enrich themselves. We need tough Republicans that are going to go and play dirty the same way that the dirty Democrats are playing dirty.
Amen. 100% agreed. And I will even take it a step further, not just tough. We need Americans like you. You see, you literally said it in different ways repeatedly, Texan American. That is commitment. And one of the reasons I haven't had a chance to tell you this, but I saw you on that Farsi interview, and I immediately went to your website, and I immediately found the email, and I emailed you, inviting you on my show while I was still watching that. And the reason I did that was your commitment to the issue rather than your commitment to you. That comes easily across. Like, anyone who's watching without bias will see that you are committed to the issue, which means you'll find a solution to it. The problem is, a lot of Republicans, forgive me for saying this, they are so arrogant that it's all about them. You ask them 5 questions, it all comes back to them. Them, me. So I want you to know that is basically the reason I will be. Of course, it was an honor to have you on my show today. We will schedule a part 2, part 3, part 5. But outside of that, anything I can offer to help your campaign without any taruf, you can count on me. I mean that. And my audience are normally very action oriented, because I normally sit here, as you notice, I'll tell them, like, do this, do that. I'm bossy. So I'm sure they will get behind you. I'm sure they will do their part. Last words of wisdom. And again, tell my audience one more time where to go, how to find you. And then I promise after that, I will let you go.
Yeah, on Instagram, Abteen Vaziri, website, abteenvaziri.com, on X, Abteen Vaziri TX, Abteen Vaziri TX. And I think, for us, it's so important for us that grew up in totalitarian governments, that grew up in communist countries, to tell the locals, the people that are born and raised here in the United States, of the dangers that are coming, because I don't think they understand. And we've already seen this movie. It's like, we're from Back to the Future. We've seen how a country that was so powerful, like Iran had the 4th biggest military in the world, the 4th biggest military. The Shah thought he was bulletproof, and they defeated him from within, and they destroyed that country. And here we are. And we've been, refugees from Iran. I've been a refugee from California. I don't want to have anywhere else to go. We have to fight for the future of our children because America is the last bastion of freedom. If America falls, that's it. The world is over. There's nowhere else to go.
Amen. I appreciate you, Abteen John. You are in my prayer, your campaign, your fight as you go through it. We're all praying for you, myself, my audience. Keep up the good work. Let's stay in touch, bring you back, do all the things we can. And you just watch your back and keep at it.
And I need you from the bottom of my heart and from all the people that, whose voice I'm going to represent going to Washington. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Wow, guys. Wow. I don't know. I enjoyed every moment of this discussion. Again, as you know, I don't do typical interviews, but it was way beyond what I was expecting. He's pretty cool, and I mean it. I don't bring candidates on my show. I don't do the whole, pay me, come on my show thing. I think he's the third candidate in my whole 12 years of doing shows on my show. So do support him. Go to his website. As I said, we barely have good people's running. And then, again, his background plays a role. He has witnessed it. You heard him say it. When you have a man in Texas who, as I said, he could have done many other things. If you look at his website, you'll see his resume. He was doing just fine with life. When he drops all of that and decide to run, and he's not afraid to be called an Islamophobe while doing so, he got my support, and I know he's got your support. So let's get behind him and do the right thing, help him. And I will definitely, I will reach out to him again, and we will schedule a second. Especially, he said he's going to meet with Epic City people. I believe he said Monday, so I'm going to try to see if I can get him for next Wednesday or Thursday to give us an update on how he's meeting with Epic City people. But you see what I mean? Again, he's a candidate, yes, but he's already, as a candidate, he's proving his point. He's showing up. When they tell him to, hey, we're going to meet with you, he's going to go in there and talk to them. He's not just sitting behind his desk running a campaign. Okay, we have 3 minutes to go. I will be back tomorrow. I have Ray Torabi. Those of you who are watching us on Worldview YouTube, you're familiar with him. He came on Brannon's show and gave a testimony of his life as a child soldier of MEK. He's going to be on my show tomorrow. We're going to briefly touch on that part of it, but me and him are going to dig a little deeper into the situation of MEK, their camps and their scenarios. And then Friday, I have a very special guest that I think you might enjoy his insight. His part of the Washington, not DC, Washington State GOP, is a chair of Washington State GOP. So he's got a lot of insight, who has been inside these offices and these meetings, especially on the financial side of things. He single-handedly raised, I think, over $14 million for President Trump in 2024 during his campaign. So he's going to join us. Yes, he is also Iranian-American. He's going to join us Friday. So another week of full show. And I will remind you one more time, guys, as you know, I am not on anybody's payroll except yours. I know things have been a little hectic and crazy, but we have faced a little bit of a slowdown on subscriptions, on Substack, or purchases on Artist Studio or Norwex. So I will encourage you, especially Norwex, cyruswellness.com. That is something that I know at least you're not just paying for, and you're at least getting good products for your household. cyruswellness.com. Artist Studio is lutfstudio.com, lutfstudio.com, and of course Substack is liveuptofreedom.substack.com. If you would consider becoming a paid subscriber, it would be greatly appreciated. You guys are amazing, and I know it's been a lot of interviews, so I will look into possibly doing an extra show this weekend, so it can be me and you doing Q&As. I know you have questions, I know you have comments, so I'll announce that tomorrow or Friday. Until tomorrow, though, I want you to be safe, stay vigilant, stay alert, listen to what's happening, and pay attention to what is not being said on air by those who should have.
This is Brannon House Live.